Perfect. So I'll get rolling. Thanks for having me out, and I appreciate it. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Be quick with the plug-in, but I'm Angelo. A lot of you guys know a lot of Twitter threads I've done, and my website angeloanalysis.com. If you don't know what that is, I basically combine fancy football, and movement principles and biomechanics to kind of get a better inside look on what it truly does look like to be an NFL athlete and how that translates to fantasy football success. So on the website, there's a bunch of information on each player, how they move, and how this kind of correlates to success at the NFL level and within their own offensive ecosystems. Like the free profile up there is Laviska Shenault. Well, how's he going to translate in Jay Gruden's offense in Jacksonville? So, and that's some of the stuff that I look at and kind of pick apart, make it a little easier to make decisions when you're watching on Sundays. So that's a little bit about that, but I'm gonna jump right into the questions. I'm gonna start from the top with how do I feel about Nick Chubb? Um, I love Nick Chubb. I think he's a top five running back in terms of talent in the NFL. Kareem Hunt doesn't really scare me that much. I know it might hurt Chubb's ADP a little bit, but I think it's a fantastic opportunity to buy him, especially with the news now that Hunt is actually going to be seeking another contract from Cleveland after this season. Um, Generally, Stefanski uses one runner on the ground, one rusher. So I think Hunt's role will primarily be on passing downs, which doesn't necessarily impact Chubb too much. He's not a great receiving back, and we know that, but he's one of the league's best pure runners, and that won't change here moving forward. The second question from Corporal Casual, great question by the way. Um, yeah, my educational experience is kind of goes way back to my college days. I was a collegiate track and field athlete, and I was a sprinter, 100, 200-meter runner. So I got to race guys like Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert, Marquise Goodwin, among others. So that was a lot of fun. It was a great experience that I was definitely blessed to have. Um, Education wise, I think it kind of boils down to my own experience as an athlete, looking at myself and analyzing my own mechanics of what I could do to become a tenth of a second faster, right, and become more efficient as a sprinter. And then after I graduated college, I started my career in performance. So I do a lot of coaching and consulting in that realm, looking at different athletes and their movement principles and their biomechanics to kind of help them get an edge on game day, but on the track as well. So for me, that relates directly to my approach on film studying and evaluating prospects and players. Me, I always kind of look at it from a cause and effect standpoint, right? So, if a running back takes a sweep out of the backfield or whatever, or a quarterback scrambling outside and he hits the sideline and he has to make a decision. So, if it's a 2-on-1 situation, you have a two option situation. You have to make the best decision possible to get the best outcome, right? To gain the most yards, to score a touchdown, right? To not get stopped on 4th and 1. Um, those are the things that I generally look at. And in short, like if we're talking about, you're very new to watching film, the first thing to look at is cause and effect action. So if I'm a running back in the open field and there's a defender coming at me, how does that running back deal with that defender in the open field, right? Does he drop his shoulder, run through him? Does he, take 2 steps outside, cut back inside? Or a really good guy to watch for this is watch DeAndre Swift, right? DeAndre Swift always flashes outside opportunity, then takes that opportunity away from the defender. As soon as he bites and false steps, DeAndre Swift takes it away, cuts back inside. He has an extra step automatically on the defender. So that's what I really look at when I'm talking about movement principles as a whole in fantasy football, and how I kind of combine the two. Position specifics, when we're talking about receivers, in particular, I like to look at how they change speeds, right? Like being a receiver is a lot about deception. You're going to have to make other thinking, feeling human being across from you think you're doing something different than you are. And how do good receivers, receive and orient themselves in their own route trees? And that's a really interesting one. Receivers I like to look at, and obviously, going up and getting the football, how do they play above the rim? Are they physical? How do they play in and out of breaks? It's a big one. They snap in and out of breaks. Do they round them? Or are they pretty quick in and out of them? Those are some of the things that I look for in that category. And next question was from the CEH Hype Conductor. I'm a big CEH fan, so I love the name. Um, yeah, Rojo in general. You talked about me retweeting FF all days. Um, uh, thread he did on him, which is fantastic, by the way. He's a great follow. Um, I love Rojo. I think as a talent, there's not much else you can ask for in terms of physical talent of Ronald Jones. He's very much like Miles Sanders in terms of the physical talent. Really good accelerator. Um, does a great job getting to the edge, and his physical talents are more so very downhill. Miles Sanders doesn't have a dynamic. He's not a dynamic mover whatsoever, but he's very good in early acceleration. If he gets a crease, he can take it to the house. And for me, with Ronald Jones, is he take that next step to learn the game of football at a deeper level, understand blitz pickup, and that's the blitz pickups, and that's the thing, the difference right now between a guy like Miles Sanders who has a Doug Peterson working next to him and a Deuce Staley and help bring him along to kind of take over Jordan Howard's role after he got hurt. And Miles Sanders still has a ways to go as an inside runner, but I think he's on the right track and the right path with a great ecosystem in general there in Philadelphia. Things are changing a lot in Tampa Bay for Ronald Jones, right? He has his second year Arian system, which is a really hard system to learn. He has Tom Brady at the helm, which is good and bad, right? Protecting Tom Brady is a lot different than protecting, Jameis Winston, right? So I think his third year in the league, he's still really young. I think he can come in this year and have the best season to date, but I think he'll be on a shorter leash with Keyshawn Vaughn coming in, who is a little more polished as a running back, but doesn't necessarily have the physical skill set in terms of talent that Ronald Jones has. Oh, man, so day 3 players, Tart, you asked this question. I like Joshua Kelly because I think this might be Jackson's last year in that Chargers offense, and I think whoever is the 1B or the 2 to Austin Eckler is going to have a fantasy relevant role. I think that might be more so a 2021 role. I think Jackson still has that role this year, at least in the interim. Besides him, is another guy in the Chargers offense I really like, and that's KJ Hill. It's interesting because Keenan Allen, isn't under contract after this season. If he decides to test free agency and go somewhere else, KJ Hill is going to be a guy who might have some pretty significant relevance there. I like some of the other names you listed: Anthony McFarland, Gabriel Davis, Antonio Gandy Golden. All those they're really interesting, intriguing players. Gandy Golden might have the greatest shot for relevance if he beats out Calvin Harmon, the role opposite of Terry McLaurin. Anthony McFarland's an interesting one because James Conner might not be back next year, and let's say Anthony McFarland towards the latter parts of this 2020 season really shows that coaching staff that he very well might be the guy there in Pittsburgh. He might have a very significant role fantasy-wise. So those are a couple of the guys I'm looking out for. DJ Dallas is another name, even though they just signed Carlos Hyde. That Seahawks backfield up in the air. We have Chris Carson, who's coming off a fractured hip, Rashad Penny, who tore his ACL, who might not even be ready for week 1. The only 2 healthy backs right now are 3, Carlos Hyde and DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. I think DJ Dallas has a really interesting and unique opportunity in front of him because he very well might get it in that Seahawks offense. And with the health problems of Penny and Carson, he might see the field earlier than we think. And if he does, it might be his job for the taking. Anybody who can keep Russell Wilson upright is going to be a guy that can stay in there all 3 downs. And that's what DJ Dallas did best at Miami. If you watch his tape, probably the best pass protecting back in this whole class. So I think that's a big deal when you look at what Carroll wants for back in his offense, and a big part of it's protecting Russell Wilson. Man, why you should be hyped for Laviska Shenault too? That's a great question. I mean, for me, I mean, you can go ahead and look at the stuff on on my website, and I put on Twitter about Chenault. But talents like him don't come around often, right? 6 foot tall, nearly 230 pounds, and his movement skills at that size are rare and kind of unprecedented. And that's a really interesting part about Chenault is he had a dominant stretch of play in college. I think he averaged like receptions, 150 total yards, 2 touchdowns per game over a 5 game stretch before injury 2 years ago. And I think that's the ceiling you're getting. You're getting a dominant elite level physical talent in Chenault. I think at his current ADP, I've seen a lot of times he's getting pushed almost to the third round, usually to around 2.6 to 2.9 is where I see him going in rookie drafts. And for a guy, if you're taking injuries away from, obviously that's a big deal. If you take injuries away from Chenault, that would have been a surefire mid first round pick in this class. He's one of the only players you can say that you can rank him top 8 at 2 positions. He's top 8 running back in this class. He's a top 8 receiver. If you watch his contributions as a runner at Colorado, you're gonna come away impressed with how natural he looks with the ball in his hands. And what Jay Gruden's gonna ask him to do in that Jacksonville offense is to play around the line of scrimmage. I do think he does have a unique deep ball skill set. However, I think he will translate really well to that offense. And what Gardner Minshew wants to do, and that's play the ball on the line of scrimmage, man. I mean, I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be a chain mover for them. That could potentially have significant fantasy relevance. Because he can also play in the backfield, so he might get dual eligibility at some point. And if he does, that's obviously a huge boost to his stock. But I love him as a player. I've been a big fan of his ever since I watched him play at Colorado in 2018 when I first watched Chenault play. And he's a special physical talent. If he can stay healthy, he might have a very long and successful career in the NFL. Jim, what's up, man? I see you asking this question. And with you asked him, with Debo, um, with the news of Debo getting injured, am I going to move Ayuk up or down? Um, I'd move him up slightly. I would always stay put on the expectations. I think Ayuk has a ways to go in terms of reaching his ceiling. I think he's a very talented receiver. However, I think his best bet for him might be to play on special teams and succeed on special teams his rookie year. I think he could be an all-pro returner, by the way. I think he's going to be fantastic in that role. I think that's one of the reasons why he had so much value in this year's NFL draft is he can be an all-pro special teamer. I think he's going to get an opportunity to play a bigger role the first quarter of this 2020 season because Debo's injury projects to keep him out maybe 1 or 2 games, if that. If I was a Debo owner right now, or even an Ayuk owner, I would monitor what we're seeing with Debo and what his timetable looks like for return. Generally, with the injury that he had in his foot, looking at he should be ready to go in 2.5 months. Rehab goes okay, but we'll have to see what happens with Debo. But I 2.5 months, maybe longer for return to play completely, close to 100%. We'll have to kind of see what happens there, but always monitor that because if if he is hurt, he's gonna miss 2-3 games, and that you might have some sneaky relevance if we see him sneak into those three receiver sets, right? Look at the next question. Right, CH Conductor, you asked again. And out of those guys, Connor Gurley, MG3, Carson, J. Bell, and Fournette, I'm going to take Gurley out of that group to potentially be a top 10 back this year. Reason being, he's done it before, right? He's an MVP caliber talent. However, he's a guy that's his knee injuries are no joke right now, right? So we're looking at his ADP getting knocked down. I've seen him I just had to start up now, and I got it's going on right now, and I took him in the 6th round, right? So we're looking at Todd Gurley as a giant discount for what he can bring to the table. That is near elite production. So it wouldn't shock me at all if we're looking at Gurley as a top 10, definitely top 15 back, with no one seemingly to take another touches away from him this year. All right. You asked about Keenan Allen. Yeah, I do like Keenan Allen in half point. I think he's going really late, but I think Tyrod Taylor is not going to push the ball down the field this year. I think Herbert has a chance of starting later on in the year, but I think 2021 is where his horizon kind of begins. Um, I do like Allen. I've always liked Keenan Allen. I'm a big fan of his game, very nuanced player. But yeah, I mean, his ADP's a little low. I mean, he's going to be a guy I think is near lock for a top 15 receiver. He plays all 16 games. Um, for me, I think a big deal about Keenan Allen is who else is really there to take, to get 100 plus targets. I know we have Hunter Henry there and Mike Williams, but Keenan Allen's the vocal point of that offense, and it's been like that for a few years now. So I think Keenan Allen's a pretty safe play as your second receiver. Or if you're a guy who likes to draft RBs early, he's a nice mid-round target for you at receiver. You asked about how I see the Miami backfield playing out. I think both Breida and Howard make a good impact. The solid 1-2 punch for both of them. I mean, I think for me, I like both those players. Being a Chicago Bears fan and growing up in Chicago, I greatly appreciate what Jordan Howard did for the Bears. I think he's a fantastic talent as a between the tackles rusher. The problem with Howard is he going to be able to stay injury free with his shoulder? Once backs of his style get shoulder injuries and begin to have shoulder surgeries, so we kind of see their production tail off and we see them miss games. Breida's not a clean bill of health either, but I think both have good value. One thing I will say, the Dolphins projected to play from behind in a vast majority of their games this year. Is a sneaky bet in PPR leagues right now. I think he's going to be a guy you can draft in the 9th and 10th round and get better than that value. Get better than that value back. But I like both of them. I wouldn't bet on either of them for my second running back spot, but I think both of them might have some sneaky value at times during the year. But I think a better ceiling play and out of those two is definitely Breida. Red, you also asked if I could give a preview of my Who's Next series. Yeah, absolutely. I think the couple of the process that I really like are Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis. I think he's a fantastic young runner that hasn't been talked up enough throughout the community. I think he's finally getting some steam now as we kind of get closer into the Devy season, and college football hopefully is being played soon. So we'll get to see him see the field hopefully fairly soon. And also Keontae Ingram out of Texas. Those are the two I'm really excited about, the running back position. I think Ingram's extremely interesting with his size. I mean, he's 6 feet, 235 pounds. But he moves like a guy who's about 205. I mean, when you watch him play, the degree of difficulty when he cuts, when he moves laterally, he's got above adequate acceleration capabilities and top end speed to go along with it. So he's an interesting one. I could see him being a potential 3rd round pick in the NFL draft next year. In terms of receiver, I think the one I'm the most intrigued to see is Rondell Moore. I'm a big Moore fan. Growing up in the Midwest, we watch a lot of Ohio State games, and Purdue games, and all the Big Ten teams. Watching Moore play, man, that kid definitely special. I mean, he's a special talent. He's definitely gonna be a guy I'm gonna be highlighting. I think for me, man, like it's a big deal when you watch a guy like that dominate at such a young age. If you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, he had such a good, not even a good man. The guy had an unbelievable freshman campaign, then injury derailed the sophomore year. Obviously, he's a guy where talents like him don't come around often. So if he's a guy I'm on the clock in a rookie draft and heavy draft and I'm looking at actually grabbing him, I mean, he's a guy. If I'm on the clock and I'm looking at Rondell Moore, I'm taking him every day of the week because I think he's a special talent that's going to translate directly to the NFL level if he stays injury free. Type connector you asked again. Great question, by the way, you asked. Rounds 8 to 11, there's guys you like. There's guys you like going later, but no one you really love. you're reaching for Djax or backup tight end. My suggestions on players in that range is get guys you're comfortable with. Also look at situations too, because guys like Raheem Mostert, Matt Breida, um, guys that are going in that around that range, and 12 team PPR maybe a little earlier, but those are guys that I would take in that range in a heartbeat. I think both can have fantasy relevant seasons. But it's going to be one of those deals where we kind of have to see both those backfields kind of shape out. Um, Jim, it just reminds me, you asked this question earlier about the 49ers backfield, so I'll trickle that in and piggyback off it. I think Raheem Mostert wins that backfield battle. You look at what he did during the playoffs. Also, look what he did the latter part of 2019. He took over that backfield and was one of the more productive backs in the NFL in the last quarter of the season. I think you can't discount that going into 2020, and you're going to get a guy in the ninth round who could potentially be a league winner with Mostert. In terms of wide receivers in the rounds 8 to 11, Deontay Johnson's going to go a little bit earlier, but his running mate James Washington's a really interesting one too, right? We saw him improve in his sophomore season, and with Big Ben back and presumably healthy, well, James Washington could have a fantasy relevant role here, and that could be a big one moving forward in that Pittsburgh offense. So those are a few guys I'm looking at this year in rounds 8 to 11. In terms of the tight end position, and I mean I'm kind of all over the place in terms of tight ends, but I've seen guys like Hooper fall. Hayden Hurst is another really interesting one. If you're not in tight end premium, even if you are, he's even more interesting. As that offense is looking pretty solid, and Matt Ryan's going to have a full disposal of weapons to toss the ball to. But Hayden Hurst, remember, the guy was a first-round pick, talented athlete physically. Obviously, Mark Andrews is a top 4 tight end in this league, so starting over him, probably wasn't feasible ever. But him starting in Atlanta might give him a ceiling as a top 6 or so tight end in fantasy. So I think that's a guy that I'm looking at too within those rounds if he's available. Grinnell, as you asked about Daniel Jones this year, man, I have a hard time coming around Daniel Jones, to be honest with you. I like him as a thrower of the football, if that makes sense. I'm not a big fan of the decision making. He also the fumbles, 18 fumbles in 2019, I think it was. I mean, the turnovers have to stop for me to be all in, or at least decrease by a significant amount. What you're really looking at with him is you're looking at Jameis Winston style quarterback, right? So that's fine. But I wouldn't think, if you're in a 6-point per passing touchdown league with 4 points per interception, see a guy I'm targeting in those middle rounds? Probably not. I think the upside's there, but until we see those turnovers decrease, he's a guy I'm avoiding in drafts. All right. Man, you asked about Derrick Henry being taken too high or too low relative to his ADP. I think his ADP is right where it should be. If we're talking in dynasty, I think it might be a little high because he is a back that got a decent amount of tread in his tires. He's a between the tackles runner. He's a pure as a ball carrier as it gets. He's not gonna not gonna hurt you in the passing game. His value comes on the ground. I like Henry as a football player. I don't know what to think of him moving forward, or how long he can truly keep this up. He's a really interesting player. I mean, if we're talking redraft, he's a guy I would definitely take. I guess I would be in the early 3rd round if I'm gonna, I'm a 10-teamer. Teamer probably a little bit earlier. I'd be okay with taking him as my first or second running back. You just got to kind of look at too, might be his last year in Tennessee. What is this if he does test free agency? What does it look like for him going to a different team? There's a bunch of teams that I would love to see him on. Like imagine him on the Seattle Seahawks. Like how much fun that would be. But it's gonna be dependent on what that offense revolves around. And right now, the Tennessee offense revolves around him and his success. So he's a guy I like in redraft. I'm not avoiding in dynasty if he falls, but he's not a guy I'm actively going after. Moncal, you asked about players taking this um, second year leap to new opportunity. Man, I think the two players, I guess I wouldn't say new opportunity, but guys that I think will take a second year leap is Steven Sims Jr. from Washington. You look what he did with Dwayne Haskins under center in those last, I think it was 4 games or so. He's a guy who's earned a role as a starting slot receiver in Washington. Um, is that going to be a fantasy relevant role on week to week basis? Maybe, maybe not. But he showed he can play at the NFL level and succeed. And I think he's a guy that I'm targeting everywhere in the later rounds. Man, I'm in a startup draft right now, like I said, and and his the ADP is like round 22, right? So you can get him for literally next to nothing. He can provide potentially a wide receiver 3 or 4 season for you. The second guy is a guy I'm a big fan of, man. That's David Montgomery. I'm a Bears fan, so I get to watch every Sunday. Poorly the Bears offensive line blocks for our running backs, but Dave Montgomery did not play mistake-free football as a rookie. He made a ton of mistakes as a ball carrier. I think he's a very skilled rusher, and he makes the correct decision, and he makes the decision quickly. I think he spends too much time in the backfield, but that's not going to work as much in the NFL, right? You gotta put your hole, you have to pick your spots when you can spend more time in the backfield, and look around and survey. But he did a lot better job of doing that in the latter parts of the year. The last quarter of the season, he finished out strong. The biggest reason I'm pretty high on Montgomery is ranked second in the NFL behind Nick Chubb in pass protection. Huge for his ceiling as a 3-down back. He's an above adequate pass catcher, and he's a guy that is going to be asked to protect Nick Foles and/or Mitch Trubisky. I think he has a good chance at finishing with over 1,250 total yards and 10 touchdowns, right? So anytime you can get a guy like that at a discount, definitely buying into that. And hopefully, that Bears offense takes a big step forward. I think we can see a big year for David Montgomery and Allen Robinson in that offense. Said there's any players have a gut feeling about good or bad. Numbers don't support that feeling. Definitely David Montgomery is one of them. I have a good feeling about it, even though he had a mediocre rookie year, even though he surpassed 1,000 total yards and touchdowns. The other one I think is going to be I don't have as good a feeling about Josh Jacobs, and it's not because I don't think Josh Jacobs is talented, but it's because I don't think he's going to be a 3-down back. If that makes sense. I think I'm bringing in Bowden. I think Bowden's going to be an Austin Eckler type player in the NFL, and I think that's going to start in Las Vegas. For me, it's tough to really say, but I'm avoiding Jacobs on the back end of the first round in drafts this year because I don't see him. A, I don't see the offense scoring enough points, and B, to support him and just his rushing totals, and B, I don't think he's a guy who's going to see 50 plus targets. I think Bowden Jr. is an extremely talented player. Could be the next Austin Eckler-ish player in terms of role and style, and I think that's a big deal. Good question though. Corporal Casual, you asked. Tricky ranking. All right, so why do my rankings deviate from big 5 running backs over receivers? I look at overall ceiling and talent most. I mean, for me, I had key tiers, which I'm gonna be moving these around every so often, I'd say every 3 weeks to a month. So my first time I'm gonna update these that are on the website probably about next week. Outside of Edwards and Jonathan Taylor, CeeDee Lamb's a tier 1 receiver for me. I just think he's the most pro-ready receiver in this class. I mean, his versatility and his multi-dimensional skill sets are going to serve him really, really well in Dallas with Dak Prescott as his quarterback. Obviously, at first glance, the Cowboys offense seems a bit crowded, but man, they have 190 targets available, 83 from Randall Cobb. I think it's important to note that, Amari Cooper has out in his contract in 2021, right, with 0 guarantees. So Lamb's going to see a ton of single coverage, and if you watch Lamb in college, Lamb is an absolute monster in single coverage. Um, but to answer your question even further, I think, outside those big three, it gets kind of murky. We have Dobbins in Baltimore, who's a running back I really like. He's my third running back ranked this year. Rager's a guy I like. Jefferson's a guy I like. Judy's a guy I like. In terms of overall talent, I think it goes receivers, it goes Lamb, then Judy. Judy's just a spectacular, dynamic mover, and he's one of the best route runners to come to the NFL in recent memory. I think he has all the physical tools to be an all-pro caliber talent who will operate mainly from the slot. But the biggest thing is it's going to be, how is Drew Lock going to improve this year as well with Jerry Jeudy? So I think Drew Lock might have a massive season, take a step up, but we don't know that yet. But for me, there's a lot of talent, and talent's pretty deep. I mean, there's talent 6, 7 deep in the first 2, 3 tiers for me. So all of it's pretty close, but the rankings are more so on long-term potential and ceiling. I think Rager and Jefferson are guys that are ranked right near Jerry Jeudy because in the near term, they're going to have really good ecosystems to thrive, right? We have Rager in Philadelphia with Carson Wentz. Presumably, he's the number one target in that offense, right? Besides Zach Ertz. Deshaun Jackson and Marquise Goodwin don't scare me much. Alshon Jeffrey's on his last legs. JJ Arcega-Whiteside might be a forgotten man at this point. I think Rager's in for a really, really big rookie campaign. If he can get on the field and get some reps in training camp and everything soon. Jefferson, like I said, I like a lot too, man. That kid's just fun to watch. And I think he can be an absolute dynamite athlete in that offense because he's going to operate mainly from the slot. He'll probably get moved around a bit. I think he's better than people think outside. But with Adam Thielen on the last year of his contract, essentially, we might see Justin Jefferson as the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver 1 next year. And if that happens, we're talking about a guy who's going to finish probably as a mid-range wide receiver 2 in 2021 or better. And that's a guy I'm definitely buying. Space Ghost, you asked rookie landing spot I'm most intrigued by in terms of fantasy relevance. It has to be Jalen Reagor's. I think Jalen Reagor is the one I'm most intrigued by because there's not a lot of targets in that offense and at the receiver position. We saw last year when everybody went down in the Philadelphia offense, it was down to like Boston Scott, right? And Greg Ward Jr. So I think, Wentz is going to take a step forward for sure. And with Wentz, I think he's going to pull Rager along with him. I guess the other one I'm intrigued by the most is J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he goes into the best possible spot for a running back of his skill set. In college, he ran a lot of read option, zone read concepts with Justin Fields, and before him with Dwayne Haskins, the Ohio State offense. So he's familiar with that. I think Baltimore Ravens have, their top 4 offense in the NFL right now. I think they're extremely intriguing. Whoever's starting at running back, whether it's Ingram, Dobbins, and speaking of Ingram, this is probably his last year in Baltimore, might be his last year as a player. I think grabbing a piece of that offense is huge. Dobbins is a very, very tantalizing physical talent who might be an RB1 next year if he gets the lead job. I get rookie. You asked also which rookie am I grabbing as many shares of. Oh, man. Michael Pittman Jr., big fan of him. I think at his ADP, mid-second roundish. An absolute steal. He's going to be the starting X for the Colts this year. I think he's going to be a guy that has he's a Pro Bowl caliber ceiling. Also, Laviska Shenault, we don't have to talk much about that. I think I'm grabbing him everywhere I can. And the last guy is Bryan Edwards, receiver. Bryan Edwards, I'm grabbing him everywhere I can because he displays physical traits to be an alpha in this league. Just like Shenault, health has been his problem, right? He has a myriad of injuries. And if he can stay healthy, we're looking at a guy who could be a Pro Bowl contributor down the line. In terms of running back, the one I want to kind of grab everywhere is Antonio Gibson. So much uncertainty in that Washington backfield. We have Bryce Love, who was unbelievable prospect coming out for his injury since when he returned for his senior season. Obviously, we have rest of the crew there and Adrian Peterson and Darius Geis and Barber. But and I mean, I think he was drafted for a reason by Rivera. It's his first year as a head coach. He wanted to get playmakers on the field, that offense to grow with Dwayne Haskins and Terry McLaurin. And I think Gibson is a playmaker. He hasn't touched the ball a lot didn't touch the ball a lot in his collegiate career, but I think he could be a very, very good player in terms of fantasy relevance because he has experience at both receiver and running back. He can presumably grow into a lead back role. With Geis' injury history, he might see that opportunity sooner rather than later. We talked about Rieger and Jefferson too. You asked that question. If I was recommending one, I would definitely say Rieger. I think that offense revolves around Carson Wentz and that passing attack. If I'm needing immediate return, I'd go Rieger. If I'm rebuilding, I'd probably go Rieger. Not by much though. I just think that Philadelphia offense is built to pass the ball, and I think Carson Wentz at the helm, I think they're going to do a lot of that this year. And they're going to take their shots deep. So we might see Rieger have some games of 6 catches, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns, right? So we might see him have some big games, right? That we saw Will Fuller have, when Will Fuller was healthy. But I think Rieger has a tremendous ceiling, man. I think he's a pretty complete player when it's all said and done. But I'm just super excited about him. And let's see what else we got. Coach, you asked about the Eagles line. I think it affects the efficiency of Miles Sanders. I don't think Miles Sanders is a very efficient between the tackles rusher in general, and I think this might hurt that. However, if you watch his touches last year, a lot of them were scheme touches outside the tackles, right? We're scheming him outside because of how good of an accelerator he is, how good he is in space. A lot of draws. I know he had a big draw. God, was it against? It wasn't against Buffalo. That was when he took that long run to the house, but a big draw play at the end of the year, and they're trying to get him in space, man. That's where he operates best. I think Boston Scott's affected. I think Boston Scott's underrated and undervalued because he is kind of in that Darren Sproles role where he's going to play on third downs, and we might see both of them in the backfield at once this year because they're both tough covers out of the backfield for linebackers. So I don't think it hurts at all. I think it hurts the efficiency of Sanders rather than his relevancy, and I'm not fading anyone because of this. I think Peterson is going to have a long enough time to figure out how to patchwork that offensive line to make them viable this year. J-Man, you asked, how does Dobbins rank on the rookie running backs? For me, I have him RB3. Next year, I know a situation. So, I mean, if we're talking about a guy in the Baltimore Ravens or a guy on, I don't know, a team, I'm going to take the guy in the Baltimore Ravens. I have him RB1, probably RB2. I mean, he's on the Baltimore Ravens. We know that's a run-heavy attack, a high-scoring offense. So, point totals could be there for Dobbins, and he could be a perennial RB1 in that offense. Wouldn't surprise me. So anytime you're going to get a perennial RB1, you're going to take it. The RBs coming out next year, I like him a good bit. I like Etienne a ton. I like Ingram, Gainwell, Harris. Whom else am I forgetting? Orgie's okay. Hubbard. There's a lot of guys I like, and we just don't know where they're going to land. So I'm taking Dobbins over all those guys because we know where Dobbins has landed. He landed in the best running back spots you could possibly dream of. And yeah, this year, and you asked another question, J-Man, about this year not being the best for tight ends. What tight ends am I excited for next year? I'll tell you this: get your hands on Kyle Pitts. Get your hand on Kyle Pitts, man. Kyle Pitts is going to be an absolute. He has a chance to be an absolute monster in this league. I think he's fantastic. Kyle Pitts and Brevin Jordan are kind of the consensus 1-2, and I think you can't go wrong with either of them. Both are big physical talents that profile for the modern day tight end. I mean, for crying out loud, man, these are guys who have all pro upside, and I think last year's tight end class was great with Fant and Hockenson. Obviously, we saw Hockenson get injured and Fant kind of, I guess, a late season breakout. But we don't know what that offense looks like in Denver. But I think Jordan and Pitts are guys I'm looking at right now. Gurnell's, you asked another question. If I like Chase Claypool as a late round redraft asset, yeah, I do. I mean, I think he's definitely an interesting guy to potentially grab because we don't really know what's going to happen with Juju Smith-Schuster. If he's out of town next year, I mean, that wide receiver one spot's up for grabs. I think Deontay Johnson, James Washington are not a bad 1-2 punch. I think they need that big X on the outside. With Claypool, I think he can definitely do that. When you saw me talk about Laviska Shenault, I think he has high 4.4 speed. He plays faster than a 4.4. I'm not a big 40-yard dash guy whatsoever. Yeah, I think definitely. I don't think he should have ran the 40 first of all. I think that was a poor decision. He had inflammation in his adductor, and it was one of those. It was one of those situations where he wanted to gut through it, but the 4.58 is not an indication of what he can do on the field. I think if he did time healthy, he's a mid high 4.4 guy at 230 pounds. It's not too bad. You asked if I would take him as second to last pick on him this year. Yeah, 100%, 1,000%. I would take him in. I would take him in the 12th round, 13th round if you have a spot for him. And I mean, I think he's a guy with great physical upside. If you're talking about, he's a guy I'm trying to get everywhere because the upside's tremendous, right? His upside's very similar to that of a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, AJ Brown. Honestly, the downside's that of Kevin White. So that's what we're really looking at here. But if he does hit, he's going to hit big, and that's going to be a big deal for you moving on, especially 2021 and beyond. I think he could be a guy that could be a wide receiver too. Beginning next year, if we see him stay healthy and stay on the field and have a role in that Gruden offense. But we have to see where he's playing, what that role looks like, how well and how good he looks. Space Ghost, you asked Jonnu Smith being hyped. Like Jonnu Smith is a physical talent. I think he has the physical ability to be a good tight end in the NFL. However, we just don't know with that offense, right? That offense is funneling targets to AJ Brown. They run through Derrick Henry. They're run first. I think Jonnu Smith can be fantasy relevant. Yes, potentially. But we tight ends it's a crapshoot usually. So there are other tight ends I'd like over Jonnu Smith. Like if we're talking about Jonnu Smith or Hayden Hurst, I'm taking Hayden Hurst. You play in Devy League? Absolutely, man. Devy Leagues are so much fun. It gets you so much. It's so much more ingrained into to college football in general, and that's super fun part about it, right? I mean, you're learning about guys who are freshmen in freshmen in college, high school, freshman in college. Man, you're gonna be like, "Whoa, this guy could be the next Saquon Barkley or whatever." But definitely play a Devy League, man. You definitely won't regret it. I mean, me, man, I love Devy League, so I'm always gonna be a big proponent of them. Corporal Casual, am I comfortable assessing quarterback prospects? And that's a great question. Normally, no. I usually stay away from quarterbacks because being in the human movement space and what I've seen collegiately and professionally, it's hard for me to age something I've never really done. I played football. I was a running back and I was a sprinter, so I know and have learned a lot about the mechanics, biomechanics of sprinting and cutting and what that looks like angle wise. All I can tell you about quarterbacks is who I like and who I dislike, and who the NFL likes, who the NFL dislikes. I think that's the biggest thing about quarterbacks is who the NFL likes. That'll be probably your biggest tell if a quarterback's going to go, well at the NFL level is they going to be drafted high. Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and Trey Lance all have tremendous chances of being first round draft picks on those guys, right? Bet on those guys. Am I going to put up threads about quarterbacks? No, probably not. I'm way more comfortable talking about wide receivers and running backs in this landscape and um, what I see from them from a pure movement perspective. Um, and you asked, but I am married, so but I will definitely give you a follow, my friend. Space Ghost Force. You asked a question about A Rob. Man, I love him. I'm an A Rob truther because I'm a Bears fan. Um, yeah, I think he can improve. I think here goes. I think he's a top six receiver talent in the NFL, man. I think watching him play on a week to week basis, he's a special talent, and I think he can finish as a back end wide receiver one this year. Wouldn't shock me if he's a top eight receiver. To be honest with you, offense, especially if Nick Foles at the helm is going to be a lot more efficient this year in 2020. So I think might be a bet for 155 plus targets. And anytime you get 155 plus targets on top of his talent, you're talking about a wide receiver one. Gurnell, read your question. You asked about Reggie Robertson. Gotta watch more of Reggie Robertson, but I did see him play a little bit. I think we're looking at these guys. What you have to also look at is how is the NFL going to value them? What's their role going to be? They're going to play X receiver, Z receiver. They're going to play in the slot. That's a big deal for me too. Is his skill set translating? His skill set can translate to a lot of different. It can mean a lot of different things, right? It also depends on landing spot. How the NFL values him. But if you look through this season and Reggie Robinson has, let's say, like a fourth round grade, and that becomes like a second round grade, for example, then his stock is going up, and that's a big deal. I'll have to watch more of Reggie Robertson, but I'm going to get back to you so I can have a more educated opinion on him. Titan Man is Eric Cooper, a top 10 receiver. Oh God, I'd say right outside the top 10. I'd say top 13. I'd be comfortable as him like wide receiver 12 or wide receiver 13 this year. I think Dax can be quarterback like 3 or 2. Like he's has an unbelievable chance ahead of him in that offense. But I think Michael Gallup's no joke. CeeDee Lamb's no joke. Those are guys that are going to command 85 plus targets on both of them. I think Cooper is going to be a 100 target guy. Hopefully he is. If he's healthy, he's definitely has a talent to finish as a top 10 receiver. But we'll see. Oh man, you asked me how many games Trubisky's going to start this year. Hopefully 0. As a physical talent, I'm a big fan. Big fan of Trubisky as a physical talent. Between the ears traits, he's lacking in that department, to say the least, man. I just don't think he makes good enough decisions to be an NFL caliber quarterback on a week to week basis. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, hopefully Foles is starting, and that's my opinion. I'd much rather see Nick Foles putting in that offense. Deuce, you asked Monty's going to take a step forward. I do. I definitely do. Is Cohen going to fade? Yeah, I think Cohen fades this year, man. I don't see him returning into the Bears in 2021. I'd be shocked if he did. I would rather have him not return to the Bears in 2021, actually. For me, Cohen's one of those backs that are annoying to watch if you're a Bears fan because you would much rather see, in my opinion, I'd much rather see Dave Montgomery on the field because Tariq Cohen doesn't offer much as a rusher. He did not offer much as a receiver last year as well. I think he needs a new offense. I think what he did 2 years ago was tremendous. He was PPR back 12, I think. Oh, I mean that was a big deal. But for me, I like Tariq Cohen in a certain role, but I would love to see him get less than 25% of that total work and give the rest to Montgomery and really see what you have in Montgomery because you're gonna have to make a decision after this year if Dave Montgomery's gonna be the back of the future or not. So I think you're gonna need to know that answer here pretty soon. Do I think fast as well? Do I think is going to overtake Henry Ruggs? I don't know. I do know this. I think Gruden loves Henry Ruggs. He's first receiver taken, and I think both could have fantasy relevance. Consistency wise, I think Brian Edwards could provide the more consistent option moving forward. I would look at what he does his rookie year, where he lines up. Um, but we'll have to kind of see how that offense looks and how Carr looks too. That's a big deal. They have Waller, Renfro, guys, a deep offense in terms of physical talent on the field. Well, I guess Renfro's not a physical talent. He's just a talent. The guy can just get open, right? He's your Julian Edelman, your Keenan Allen type player who gets open all the time, and that might play well for fantasy football too. He might be a future wide receiver 3. Um, but I don't know, man. I'll just watch where Edwards lines up, how he's being targeted. I think he might play a role similar to that of Michael Thomas, working more of those short to intermediate areas, using his size to wall off defenders on slants and routes, and crossing routes. Now, as you asked about Reed Blankenship from Mid Tennessee. I'll have to watch him more. I don't watch film on many defensive players. I come home usually pretty late at night, so I try to spend my time watching some of the guys that are going to have fantasy relevance because I don't really play IDP. But that's definitely someone I'm going to look at a little deeper to get an educated viewpoint on him too. But thank you for that. I appreciate that, man. Um, I like Brees Hall a lot. I think Brees Titan Man. You asked us. Sorry, Titan Man. You asked about Brees Hall, man. I'm a big fan of Brees Hall. I think he's going to be a really interesting NFL prospect. I'd like to see what his physical measurables are. But I mean, for me, he's kind of a lock for a day 1 or day 2 pick. And anytime you're a lock for a day 1 or 2 pick, you're gonna have some value there. Um, Scott, you asked, who do I recommend for tape on the defensive side of the ball? There's a couple guys that I think do a really good job. Um, Let me take a look and see if I can find them. I think it was Joy the Tooth does a good job. IDP Army. All those guys do a pretty decent job in terms of looking at IDP players. Also one Gary Van Dyke does a decent job as well. I like what those guys do. And one of the ones I like too is Alex Barnett. I think he does a really nice job too. Him, Damian Parson. Those are just name a few. They do a pretty good job of kind of outlining what those IDP guys might come out and look like. Jordan Evans, I think is his name. As well, I think he's a part of the IDP guys, or IDP 411. The guys at the IDP 411 do a good job too. So those are really good. Those are really good dudes for rookie breakdowns on the defensive side of the ball. What are my views in the Jets receiver core? It's interesting because I think Jamison Crowder is a screaming buy. Denzel Mims is going to have one or two things happen to him. Rashard Perriman's going to start, and then Denzel Mims stops going to go down. Denzel Mims is going to start, is going to face Stephon Gilmore and the rest of those really good quarterbacks in the AFC East. His stock's going to go down. I think it's going to be really, really, really tough. Denzel Mims to have a really good rookie season. Do I think he can be a really good NFL player? Yes, but he's extremely, extremely raw and needs refinement and needs playing time. And I don't trust Adam Gase as far as I can throw him, right? For me, I mean, it's Crowder and everybody else right now. Of targets and fantasy upside. Jamal Adams play this year? Dallas. I think Dallas is going big or going home. I think Jerry wants Super Bowl in Dallas, and I think they're going to get that done. With Amari Cooper having out in his contract in 2021, I think money could line up there long term potentially. Yeah, I hope it's Dallas. That'd be awesome to watch. As a Bears fan, I would probably hate it, but if it's the Bears, just be the Bears. I think that defense would be the best defense in the NFL if we got Jamal Adams for sure. Casual. It's a funny question. Watch football on Sundays. How much do I yell at the TV for guys wasting steps? All the time. I think this is what I do. I yell, I rewind, and I yell some more about some of these guys are doing, but I'm halfway kidding because these guys are elite level athletes, man. I mean, these guys know what they're doing. These guys have coaches that know what they're doing, and deal when we're looking at guys of their caliber. These guys are all elite for a reason. Yes, I do yell at my TV sometimes. Kelly, you asked if I plan to draft later around QBs or tight ends. If I plan to draft later QBs and tight ends, is it worth the pay up around for a stack? Yes and no. I think it is if you have conviction in the guys, and if they're younger talents, and you think they can be great together, and grow, and I think that's huge. So if you want that, if dynasty especially, I think that's a big deal. Is it worth it? I can't really say if it is or not, but depends on your team composition. But if you think that stack could win you a championship down the line, then dude, go for it. Absolutely. You want Corporal Casual? You want an early look on the 2020 2020 draft class? Oh, quick take top 5. Oh, okay, top 5 players in terms of offensive players for me. Fantasy relevant. Trevor Lawrence, definitely number 1. Justin Fields, Mar Chase, Ondale Moore, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris. I'm omitting Trey Lance, but I probably shouldn't. But those are kind of my 5. I'm gonna try to outline non-quarterbacks in my breakdowns. But yeah, hey, this was a ton of fun, guys. Thank you again for sending all your questions. I appreciate. You can follow me on um at Angelo_fantasy on Twitter, and feel free to pop over to my website to check out the Chenault thread and see what you think. I'm also donating 100% of the proceeds and matching actually double that. So until July 1st. For me, it's a big deal to educate people on the African American community and the struggles that people of color kind of go through on a day-to-day basis, and I'm donating that money to Race Forward. So if you are interested in subscribing, now is a really good time to do so. Your money is going to go towards a great cause and education for people of color until July 1st, and I'll be ×2 matching that, and I'm really excited to do that. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon. If you need anything at all, just pop over to my Twitter. DMs are always open, and feel free to ask. And Ghost, you asked who's my fishbowl QB. I have no idea right now. I don't know. I pick 104. I know that. So we'll see, man. I'm pumped for that, though. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Please don't tell me Teddy Bridgewater. That's funny, though. But no, thank you guys so much. I truly appreciate it. Have a great night, everybody who's listening. We'll talk soon.